When I was 8 years old, I was this little kid and I had a big imagination. I was playing with a wooden stick, pretending that it was a sword. So I'm slaying this big dragon. Out of the corner of my eye, I see this older kid walking on the sidewalk towards me. I pay no attention to him and continue fighting the big dragon. And all of a sudden, this boy comes up to me and he says, "Hey, fool, what you looking at?" Man, I'm not even looking at this guy. I'm trying to fight this dragon. What is he talking about? I'm frustrated, and I look at him and I say, "Fool, I ain't even looking at you." And right in the moment that I said that, I knew I had made a big mistake. You see, I had challenged the code of manhood. The code of manhood is you don't challenge a guy that's tougher than you. And if you're a tough guy and someone challenges you, you better get even or else you won't be tough anymore. So he grabs the stick from me, starts hitting me with it. I cower over, crying, tell him to please stop. Finally, he does, and he leaves, and I'm in pain. And I turn around to walk to my front door, and I notice that my stepfather was there. And he had been there the whole time watching and did not step in. And he came up to me and he said, "Hey, stupid, you need to grow some balls. You need to fight for yourself. You need to fight back." From this moment on, I listened to what my stepfather taught me. I became, or tried to become, the tough guy. I started bullying other kids like that older bully did to me. I started fighting with kids. I started to want to learn about guns. And I started to normalize violence, like, oh, someone got shot, someone got stabbed. Oh, well, it's part of life. I started to use what sociologist Howard Pinderhughes calls violence as a violence prevention strategy. In other words, you're in the concrete jungle, survival of the fittest. As a man, you better be tough and show toughness before anyone ever even tries to challenge you. So my heart encapsulated. The only emotion I was allowed to express was anger, and that's it. And in time, I grew into a young adult. I got into a lot of trouble because of this toxic masculinity, and I just couldn't help to be more and more toxic. It wasn't until I got to college that I started to change my perception of my identity as a man. You see, I took a feminist studies class. I got put in check really quick in there, I'll tell you. I learned about patriarchy, how men for thousands of years have controlled society through aggression, through violence, have put down women, and have artificially created a sense that women cannot compete at the same level as men in the workplace. And that's why in that class I learned that women to this day in American society make 77 cents for every dollar a man makes. That doesn't sound like a lot, but 33 cents if you average it out by the average professional annual salary, that's enough to make 2 luxury car payments per month every year. And so you have men that can afford to buy more than women for the simple fact that they have male privilege. I started to think about how I could try to reverse this toxic masculinity, how I could try to address it, how I could try to denormalize it. Around this time, I also met someone that would become my life partner, Rebecca Rios, and we've been happily married for 20 years. And all these years, she's taught me to hold myself accountable. All these years, she's held me accountable. All these years, she's challenged that socialized toxic masculinity that I still once in a while will display. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that toxic masculinity is going to be very hard to get rid of in our society. And maybe for a long, long time, we won't be able to get rid of it. But the one thing we could do as an interdependent community, all of us step up and denormalize toxic masculinity. To say that it's not okay for us to tweet in ignorant ways about women. To say that it's not okay for us to continue to consume video games and films that make women objectified, that make men look hyper-violent, that then little boys growing up think that that's who they have to be. That we teach a curriculum in schools, right, that helps us understand what manhood is all about. One quote that really caught my attention and really helped me out a lot in this course, because it reminded me of my mother, was, "Men are afraid that women will laugh at them. Women are afraid that men will kill them." And that's when I knew that women in our society, because of toxic masculinity, have so much more at stake in terms of having to worry for their well-being. So as I started to conduct research as a professor, I worked with young men that were getting caught up in the prison system, and I came up with alternatives for them, alongside of them, to toxic masculinity. And while I watched them go through experiences of violence, I thought my days of seeing and being around violence were behind me. But one day, in this very same community, a gunman took 7 lives. One of my students was almost killed by this gunman, and he didn't know what to do. He couldn't, in his own words, control his emotions, even though his whole life he had been taught to control his emotions as a man. And I told him, it's fine. Let out your emotions. Find a way to heal. And the best way to heal through trauma, Vosh was his name, is to build an interdependent community around you where you rely on each other to heal collectively. Vosh and I started to conduct workshops. We wrote a workbook to have conversations about masculinity. Here is Vosh with his artwork, discussing masculinity and toxic masculinity with individuals in the local community. And over time, Vosh and I concluded that what we need in the society, together as an interdependent community, to work towards is 3 things. Number 1, schools. We have to ask schools and demand that schools teach our boys at very young ages what's at stake when you practice toxic masculinity. We have to teach our boys in schools to denormalize toxic masculinity. Number 2, parents. Parents raise their boys to be empathetic with the world, raise their boys to check their privilege. When you're at the playground and at young ages, already men spreading, taking up so much space that you have little girls affected by your presence, that you need to learn to be aware and empathetic with others. To demand that schools teach our boys that masculinity, there's different versions. Toxic masculinity is not one to follow. And finding alternatives to that toxic masculinity, a healthy masculinity. And men, let's hold each other accountable. Let's have a heightened awareness of our actions, our words. Let's be in conversation with one another. What those fraternity brothers that we talk to with these workshops and other college males that we've talked to with these workshops have told us is that they wish that from younger ages they had been able to have these conversations. So let's make their wish come true. Right? Let's start those conversations as an interdependent community and together find ways to denormalize toxic masculinity. Finally, a praxis of manhood. Let's constantly reflect on our actions as men and work relentlessly towards a masculinity of empathy, alliance, equity, and justice. To conclude, toxic masculinity provides boys and men a limited framework to effectively and peacefully problem solve and excel in our world. Fluency in hatred, resentment, and anger just creates emotional baggage that keeps us from flourishing. Let's teach men to be mindful, to have gratitude, to have empathy, to have kindness, generosity, and curiosity, tools to help them live much fuller and happier lives, tools to help them flourish and in turn become champions of equity and dignity for all. Let's teach men as an interdependent community to have empathy in their manhood. Thank you very much. Thank you.